It's June 12th, 2019, and the St. Louis Blues just made history by winning their first ever Stanley Cup in franchise history. But that's not what everyone's talking about. What everyone's talking about is where they were just 6 months prior to this celebration. They were in the basement, dead last in the league, and it looks like their 52-year cup drought was going to continue another year. But it didn't, as they went on one of the greatest runs in NHL history, and, well, you know the rest. After a disappointing 2017-2018 season, the St. Louis Blues were looking to improve. They knew they had a competitive roster on their hands, as they had just barely missed the playoffs with 44 wins and 94 points. They were just a few pieces away from making the next step. The roster consisted of the likes of Vladimir Tarasenko, Brayden Schenn, Alex Pietrangelo, and Jake Allen in net. So it's clear to see that this team could contend with the right additions. At the end of the 2018 season, in May, the Blues front office made their first change to get ready for the next season, and that was to replace assistant coach Daryl Sydor with Mike Van Ryn. The next big move was to acquire one of the best two-way centers in the game, and that was Ryan O'Reilly. O'Reilly came from Buffalo and was expected to lead the Blues' first line. So the Blues entered the season with high hopes. After finishing just 1 point shy of the playoffs the previous year, they were hoping to contend for a playoff spot as they only got better on paper. But despite the high hopes, the Blues started out sluggish. They would start the season out going 7-9-3, and on November 19th, head coach Mike Yeo was fired and replaced by Craig Berube, who had served as assistant coach with the Blues since 2017. They would continue their cold streak all the way up until the new year, and on January 2nd, the Blues were sitting at a league-wide worst 15-18-4 for 34 points. Now, it's hard to point fingers at certain players on a team when they're not performing, but the tandem of Jake Allen and Chad Johnson was just not working out. Through the first 37 games of the Blues season, Allen had started 29 of them, posting a .900 save percentage with a 3.06 goals against average. Johnson was even worse. He was putting up an .884 with a 3.55 goals against average. So it was clear that the Blues were not getting the goaltending that they needed to be competitive. The offense was there, as newly acquired O'Reilly had 35 points and Tarasenko had 22, so the problem wasn't that they weren't scoring enough, it was just that they were letting too many in. So with desperate hopes to make a mid-season comeback, the Blues tried to fix their goaltending problem by playing the 25-year-old Jordan Binnington. Binnington, who was the Blues' best goalie prospect, had played over 200 minor league games and 0 NHL games. But that all changed on January 7th, when head coach Craig Berube decided to start him after giving Allen the last 14 in a row. Although the Blues were near the bottom of the standings, stakes were high, as if they wanted to make a late-season comeback, they needed to start winning games now. And Binner helped them do that, as he stopped all 25 shots for a shutout victory in his first NHL game. And Berube decided to ride the hot goalie, as Binnington played 6 of the remaining 9 games in January, going 4-1-1 with a .926 save percentage. This gave the Blues hope, as they finally had a goalie that was playing well, and it only got better from there. In the month of February, Binnington played in 11 of the 14 games and put up unreal numbers. He went 11-1, putting up a .945 save percentage and a 1.4 goals against average, and had 4 shutouts. And at this time, the Blues went from last place in the league at the turn of the year to 3rd place in the division. In the last month and a half of the season, Binnington had a .912 and a 2.3 goals against average, helping the Blues clinch the playoffs. And they didn't just barely squeak in, they clinched the playoffs with more than a week left in the season. So on January 2nd, the Blues had a 10.1% chance at making the playoffs. They then went on a 30-10-5 run and finished just 1 point back of the division-leading Nashville Predators, and tied the Winnipeg Jets, who they would face in the first round. And after the best season of his career, Ryan O'Reilly was announced as one of the 3 finalists for the Selke Trophy, awarded to the league's best defensive forward. So the Blues were in the playoffs now, set to play the Winnipeg Jets in the first round, and it doesn't matter how they got there or that they were in last place or anything like that. All that matters is they made it to the postseason and have the same chance at the Cup as the 15 other teams fighting for it. But it started against the Jets. The previous year, the Jets made the Western Conference Final and had a very solid roster with the likes of Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, Patrick Laine, and Connor Hellebuyck in net. The Blues would go up 2-0 in this series, but then drop the next 2 games in St. Louis, splitting the series before heading back to Winnipeg for Game 5. Down 2 goals and scoreless after 2 periods, they rallied with goals from Ryan O'Reilly and Brayden Schenn to tie the game. Then with just 15 seconds left in regulation, Jaden Schwartz shocked the Winnipeg crowd with a go-ahead goal that stood as the game winner. As the Blues aimed to secure a spot in the second round, Schwartz wasted no time, scoring just 23 seconds into the game. He followed up with 2 more goals over the next 2 periods, giving the Blues a commanding 3-0 lead deep in the third period. The Jets fought back with 2 goals, including a shorthanded one in the final minute, but the Blues held on for their first home win of the series, clinching a ticket to the second round for the 3rd time in 4 years. And for the 2nd time in 4 years, the Blues would face the Stars in the second round of the playoffs. And once again, it went to 7 games. The Blues had home ice advantage, with Robbie Fabry opening the series scoring, followed by 2 goals from Tarasenko for a Game 1 win. Game 3 was a thriller, with the Blues losing the lead twice in the third period, but ultimately winning thanks to the goal from Alex Pietrangelo and a late game winner from Pat Maroon. The Stars responded with strong performances in the next 2 games, driven by goaltender Ben Bishop. However, Game 6 in Dallas saw the Blues take control. Pietrangelo scored early, and Colton Parayko's slap shot led to a critical goal. The Blues avoided elimination, forcing a decisive Game 7 at home. Game 7 was a classic, extending into double overtime. The Blues and Stars exchanged first period goals, but the game remained tied through regulation and through the first overtime. Binnington stopped 29 shots while Ben Bishop faced 54. The decisive play began with a face-off win, leading to Pat Maroon tapping in a rebound 5:50 into double overtime. Enterprise Center erupted as Maroon, a St. Louis native, scored the series-clinching goal to move them to the Western Conference Finals. The victory set up a rematch with the San Jose Sharks, who also went 7 games in their previous series. The conference final began in San Jose, where the Blues managed to split the series before returning to St. Louis. In Game 3, the Sharks opened with 2 first-period goals, but the Blues roared back with 4 goals in the second period, including 2 from David Perron. The Sharks tied it up, though, with 2 goals in the third, forcing the series to its first overtime game. Despite numerous scoring chances in overtime, the Blues were unlucky. Erik Karlsson scored nearly 5 minutes in with a controversial goal due to a hand pass from Timo Meier. The play was deemed non-reviewable, even though the goal was a clear hand pass. I feel you, Binnington. The Blues fell behind 2-1 in the series after this, and instead of an excuse, the hand pass became a motivation for the Blues in the following games. After the hand pass game, the Blues came back strong. They edged out a low-scoring Game 4 and dominated Game 5 in San Jose. Jaden Schwartz recorded his second hat-trick of the playoffs, and Jordan Binnington made 21 saves for a 5-0 shutout win, putting the Blues just 1 win away from the Stanley Cup Final. Injuries plagued the Sharks ahead of Game 6, giving the Blues an advantage. 5 different Blues players scored, and Ryan O'Reilly contributed 3 assists as the Blues clinched the series at home. Next up, they faced the Boston Bruins, the team that defeated them in their first Stanley Cup Final appearance back in 1970. The Stanley Cup Final started in Boston on Memorial Day. Braden Shen scored the first Blues goal in a Cup Final in 49 years, but the Bruins battled back to win 4-2. In Game 2, Robert Bertuzzo and Vladimir Tarasenko scored to tie the game, and Carl Gunnarsson's overtime goal secured the Blues' first ever Stanley Cup Final win. In Game 3, the Bruins dominated with a 7-2 victory. The Blues bounced back in Game 4 with a 4-2 win, highlighted by Ryan O'Reilly's 2 goals and Jordan Binnington's strong performance, helping tie the series. Game 5 was a defensive battle. Ryan O'Reilly scored early and David Perron added another goal, and despite a Bruins late comeback, the Blues held on for a 2-1 win. The 5-1 loss in Game 6, though, set up a decisive Game 7 in Boston. On June 12, 2019, the Blues faced the Bruins in Game 7. O'Reilly and Pietrangelo scored in the first period. Shen and Sanford added 2 goals in the third, sealing a 4-1 victory. Binnington made 32 saves, securing the Blues' first ever Stanley Cup title. Just 6 months prior, they were dead last in the league, but they defied the odds with an incredible mid-season resurgence. This was a true underdog story, and what makes it even better is that the story ended in Brad Marchand's tears.